Dear students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Professor P. Bhaskar Reddy, Department of Ancient Indian History, Culture and Archaeology, Sri Venkateswara University, Tirupati. This is the subject which you are studying is Indian culture. The paper is on Indian epigraphy and the module is Introduction to Indian Epigraphy. This is the first module of the paper Indian Epigraphy. As a first module, this is designed to know about what is epigraphy and its multifaceted studies. It is a known fact that history is the subject of study dealing with the past. The past events we are understanding with the help of various source materials. Among the various source materials which helps to reconstruct the history and culture of the past, inscriptions are the most reliable and authentic sources. The studies on inscriptions is called epigraphy, and epigraphy is one of the core branch in archaeology. As an introductory model, in this study, you are going to learn about various facets of epigraphy and its related activities. This module is particularly able to understand what is the meaning of epigraphy, the history of epigraphical studies in India, the nature and scope of epigraphy, and how it is useful for the reconstruction of ancient and medieval history and culture, its relevance to paleographical studies and language studies, the establishment of epigraphical branch and its activities, besides estampage taking of stone and copper plate inscriptions, and also the necessity of preservation of inscriptions. With these objectives, let us start our discussion on what is epigraphy. The word epigraphy is derived from two Greek words, epi meaning on or upon, and graphy meaning to write. Hence, epigraphy is the study of writings engraved on different materials known as inscriptions or epigraphs. In India, inscriptions are issued on stone, copper plates and various materials, and also terracotta and others. When that such type of inscriptions are utilizing for the purpose of the study of history and culture, the discipline of such study was established. Individual scholars are referred as epigraphers or epigraphists, and the subject was titled as epigraphy. In this regard, epigraphs are issued very ancient time, and they were available on various hard materials. When these epigraphical studies began, and when this type of studies utilized for the purpose of the knowing of the past events, who are the pioneers, that is also essential to know about the history of epigraphy. The first to practice epigraphy were the ancient Greek scholars Thucydides and Polybius, who took an interest in ancient Egyptian and other inscriptions from older civilizations. It is known that the Egyptians were the first who issued clay tablets having the script of their own, which is come under this category of inscriptions. So they were the first who initiated the studies of inscriptions. Later, European scholars during the Renaissance took an interest in Latin and Greek inscriptions and started to develop methodologies towards studying epigraphy. In India is concerned, the systematic research in the epigraphical studies began in the second quarter of 18th century during the British rule. The Britishers who have a knowledge about the utilization of the epigraphs in their European countries, they were the first who initiated these studies in the discovery of inscriptions and utilizing these inscriptions for the reconstruction of Indian history and culture. Among the pioneers who who initiated this epigraphical studies in India is concerned, Charles Dickens we have to mention first. He was the pioneer Indologist who initiated the first publication of an old inscription in Sanskrit language in the year 1781. Later, the efforts of Sir William Jones, who was also a renowned Indologist, and we have to make a special reference to him, who made a significant contribution to the study of Indian epigraphy. He was the founder of the Asiatic Society of Bengal in the year 1784 with an intention to collect various manuscripts and also various materials which were available in the form of inscriptions and coins. Later, with the effort of Asiatic Society of Bengal, they collected number of inscriptions and also coins. In the year 1830s, epigraphy is witnessed glorious advancement in decipherment of many unknown scripts employed in the among that, James Prinsep and his contribution is memorable and everlasting. He successfully deciphered the early Brahmi script in the year 1837. Since then, epigraphy and its related studies became an important discipline in archaeology, and also these studies are helpful for the reconstructing the history of India from Mauryan period onwards. Regarding the nature of epics are concerned, the inscriptions are basically two categories. One is stone inscription and other are copper plate grants. Majority of the stone inscriptions are donative in nature, recording donations to various scholars and institutions. Mainly, these stone inscriptions are engraved on different architectural members of the temple, boulders, pedestals of images, hero stones, sati stones, etc. Among that, the inscriptions of Ashoka, who were the first who issued the inscriptions on boulders, they were called as edicts, which form a separate class, which they give the message of morality and piety of Ashoka, which were called as Dharma Shasanas. Later, the copper plate inscriptions mostly record land grants made to similarly to the learned individuals like Brahmanas, religious heads, preceptors and institutions. Thus, the inscriptions, which are basically divided into two categories, but there are various categories of inscriptions which, if we may consider the content or the issue of the grants. That may be a different topic to discuss in the coming chapters. Coming to the scope of epigraphy is concerned, epigraphy is the most reliable and authentic source for the reconstruction of Indian history and culture, and these inscriptions, in some way, it was directly connected to the contemporary society and events. Thus, the epigraphy is a primary tool of archaeology dealing with literate cultures. The science of epigraphy is to classify the writings and contents of inscriptions. They are the major source to understand the life of the people. Thus, epigraphy forms one of the most important sources for understanding the history and culture of India from the time of Mauryan Emperor Ashoka, who ruled in the 3rd century BC, and they are continuing as a source for understanding different phases of political, social, economic, religious, art history up to late medieval period. Thus, the scope of epigraphy is very vast and it is very important source material for writing the history of various facets of culture of India. The epigraphy not only useful and the inscriptions are useful for the reconstruction of history and culture, but it is also relevant to the studies of various disciplines. One among such discipline which was related to inscriptions is paleography. What is paleography and what is its importance? How the inscriptions are useful for the study of paleography, we may discuss now. Paleography means study of ancient writing systems and deciphering. The epigraphy has twofold approaches. One is ability to decipher the script, and the second to interpret the language and contents of the epigraphs. Thus, this epigraphical studies brings us to the field of both paleography and linguistics are concerned. Among these two, in the epigraphical studies, paleography occupies supreme place since it is directly connected with evolution and formation of letters. The epigraphy is the main source to understand the origin and evolution of scripts in India is concerned. And the inscriptions provide a continuous data from Mauryan period up to the present day, how the script was developed and originated, and how the earliest script were transformed to modern script. In this regard, the earliest known system of writing in India and Indian subcontinent is found on the seals used by the people of Indus Valley, flourished about 2500 BC to 1500 BC. But this writing has not been deciphered successfully, though many scholars attempted for its decipherment, and they interpreted the Indus script into different ways by following different methods. However, still it is a vain, and we have to wait for further attempts for the successful decipherment of the Indus script. But one thing is real, that the Indian people have the knowledge of writing even in the Indus period itself. After Indus script, till the period of Ashoka, nothing is known about the system of writing, but there are references to the writing in the religious literatures like Vedas, Puranas, Brahmanas and Upanishads, which they help us to connect the practice of writing in India, and the scripts was known to the people of India from Indus to Ashokan period. It is known that Ashoka was the first who used the decipherable script in India is concerned. The Brahmi script is the earliest script, appeared in the edicts of Ashoka. The Brahmi script is a popular script found throughout the length and breadth of the country. Have a look at the nature of the Brahmi alphabets and also the content of the Ashokan inscriptions by using the alphabets and consonants. Besides Brahmi, during the same period, Ashoka used many scripts. They are Kharosthi, Aramaic and Greek scripts, which they were specially used in the northwestern parts of India. But their continuation is very limited. They are found only a certain period of Indian history. However, the Brahmi script is the most important script which was found in the edicts of Ashoka. It was the source for the development of various scripts of Indian subcontinent except Urdu. How, when these changes and developments took place, and what are the factors that contributed for the development of regional scripts, it is also necessary to know about the historical evolution of scripts. The Brahmi script underwent changes, particularly due to the use of new writing tools and techniques. And in different points of history, there were different scripts were developed besides the modifications of the Brahmi script, and also later several regional scripts were also introduced. Thus, the Brahmi script is the mother script found in the subsequent period for the development of almost all the scripts of India. But even it is the mother source for the scripts used in some parts of Southeast Asia. Besides paleography, the inscriptions are also useful and authentic source to know about the evolution of languages and the languages used in the contemporary records. Thus, the inscriptions is very important in the study of languages also. And the epigraphy is dealt with the origin, structure and development of languages of Indian subcontinent since the Mauryan age. Because the contemporary records mentioned or they were written in the particular languages used by the people. For example, the Ashokan edicts are in Prakrit language. It was the common and uniform language known to all people of India because his inscriptions in various parts of Indian subcontinent were issued in the same Prakrit language. Besides Prakrit language, Ashoka also written some inscriptions in Greek and Aramaic languages. But later on, the Prakrit disappeared from the usage of inscriptions. The Sanskrit occupied its place. This incident took place in northern India around 3rd century AD, while this change took place about a century later in South India regarding the transition of the language from Prakrit to Sanskrit. Coming to the North India is concerned, from the 4th century AD onwards, under the patronage of Guptas and their contemporary rulers, Sanskrit became the language of the inscriptions. Majority of the inscriptions from that period onwards were issued in the Sanskrit language. Besides the Guptas, their contemporary rulers like Vakatakas and also later Chalukyas and others, they also employed Sanskrit in their inscriptions. Sanskrit continued to be used in the inscriptions all parts of India along with the regional languages in the subsequent centuries. In that, regarding the development of languages are concerned, the copper plates of Pallavas, Cholas and Pandyas are written in both the Sanskrit and also Tamil in South India is concerned because it is the transition where Sanskrit was replaced by the Tamil. Regarding the regional languages are concerned, the Kannada is used in the inscriptions of South India from about 5th century AD. The inscriptions in Telugu language began appear from 6th century AD onwards. The Malayalam also made its beginning in the inscriptions a later date from 5th century AD onwards. Besides the South Indian languages, the Neo-Indo-Aryan languages of the North and Central India like Marathi, Oriya, Hindi, Gujarati, Bengali, etc. also appeared in the inscriptions at a comparatively later date. Thus, the epigraphy is the main and authentic source to know about the history of various languages of India is concerned because the inscriptions were issued in the languages of their own. So that it tells about the story of the transition of different languages and scripts. Thus, epigraphy is very important. Not only it is a source material for the study of history and culture, it is an important source for the study of paleography and also languages studies. With this brief introduction on the various facets of epigraphy, we may shift our discussion on the epigraphical branch of India and its activities when it was established and its related activities. The epigraphical branch of Archaeological Survey of India came into existence in the year 1886 at Bengaluru. The primary function of this wing was to copy inscriptions on boulders, stone pillars, stones, temple walls, copper plates, etc. Since the establishment, this branch has not only collected thousands of inscriptions but also edited and published them in various journals and various volumes. After some years, This branch was shifted to Ootakamandu, known as Ooty, in the year 1903 and functioned there till 1966, and then it was shifted to Mysuru, where it continues to function. The epigraphical branch of Archaeological Survey of India now functioning at Mysuru, which doing a lot of work for engraving of inscriptions and also for the discovery of inscriptions and copying of inscriptions and its activities. Besides the Mysore, to accelerate the copying and publishing of inscriptions, two zonal offices were established, one at Chennai and another at Jhansi in the year 1990. The North Zone office was later shifted from Jhansi to Lucknow in the year 1999. Since 1990, many inscriptions have been copied by these newly established zones, which have further augmented the epigraphical studies. Besides this, a branch located in Nagapur for copying and publishing Arabic and Persian inscriptions have been in existence since 1950. Thus, epigraphical branches of Archaeological Survey of India and its zones are doing much for the discovery of inscriptions and also for the activities and studies related to inscriptions. So far, with the efforts made by several pioneers, approximately 87,000 inscriptions written in different languages are copied and their stamp pages are preserved in the epigraphy branch at Mysuru. Among that, the various inscriptions which related to several languages are Sanskrit and allied dialects are nearly 13,000. Tamil, it is a high number, 48,000. Telugu, around 13,000. Kannada, around 13,000. Besides that, the Arabic and Persian branch, Nagapur, also copied 13,000 inscriptions. Thus, with the establishment of the Epigraphical Survey of India and with their activities, with their discovery, with their surveys, nearly more than 100 inscriptions were copied and they were preserved in the epigraphical branches, which they are the authentic source for the studies of Indian history and culture, which they are the basic source for its understanding. Besides that, it is necessary to know about what are the publications taken up by the Epigraphical Society of India and their importance. The epigraphical branch has been bringing out several publications. One among such publications is Annual Report on Epigraphy. It is known that every year the staff of epigraphical branches undertake extensive survey work throughout the length and breadth of India and copy a large number of inscriptions. The summary of these inscriptions, along with the other details of the dynasty which it belongs, the king who issued, the language employed in the inscription, the script used for that inscription, and also the date of, if available, of that inscriptions are published in detail in these annual reports. Besides that, important inscriptions are also reviewed in the same journal as an introduction. So far, there are nearly 100 reports has been brought out by the epigraphical branch. Another important publication of epigraphical branch is Epigraphica India. In this, some of the important inscriptions are critically edited and their importance is brought out in this publication. So far, 43 volumes of Epigraphica India have been published and they are very much useful to know about the various aspects of Indian history and culture through this publication of inscriptions. Corpus Inscriptions Indicarum, it is another publication of the Epigraphical Society of India, and these volumes contain detailed description and critical notes of inscriptions belong to a particular dynasty or a period. So far, 7 volumes dealing with Asokan inscriptions, Bharhut inscriptions, inscriptions of the Vakatakas, Imperial Guptas, Kalachuris, Chedis, Silaharas, Chendellas and Paramaras have been brought out. South Indian inscriptions. It is one of the important contribution of the epigraphy branch because South India is a land of inscriptions and majority of the inscriptions discovered so far are the South Indian languages. The inscriptions copied from the states of South India covering all the Dravidian languages are published in these South Indian inscriptions volumes. In this, here the text of the inscriptions is published in the regional languages in which the records were engraved. So far, 35 such volumes have been brought out and most of them contain Tamil inscriptions which already we have discussed, nearly 48,000 inscriptions. Besides the above, there are various publications taken up by the epigraphical branch. The other publications are Karandai plates of Rajendra Chola I, a copper plate hoard of the Gupta period from Bagh, Madhya Pradesh and epigraphs of Madhya Pradesh, the topographical list of North Indian inscriptions, topographical list of South Indian inscriptions, dynastic list of copper plate inscriptions, index of the articles of epigraphical indica and also subject index of inscriptions. Thus, the epigraphical branch of Archaeological Survey of India carrying its activities with multifarious functions in copying the inscriptions, in publishing the inscriptions and with their publications, these inscriptions form an important source for the study of Indian history and culture since its beginning up to late medieval period. It is known that one of the important activity of epigraphy is technique of copying inscriptions. How the inscriptions were copied, which they were either stone inscriptions or copper plate. The technique of copying stone inscriptions are different and copper plate inscriptions are different. Now we may proceed to discuss the estampage taking of stone inscriptions at first. For taking estampage of stone inscriptions, several tools and materials are required. The tools used for copying stone inscriptions are many. They are a map litho paper of 80 GSM thickness for taking estampage, a specially prepared ink made by mixing together lamp black powder and Arabic gum, waterproof drawing ink and water, a bent breathing brush made up of horsehair for pressing the paper into the writings engraved on the stone, a dabber made of leather in different sizes for applying ink onto the paper, a wire brush and also coir brush for cleaning the stone if dust is there, a sponge with smooth rubber for cleaning the dust of the stone, one bucket of water for its purpose. These are the essential and required tools and materials for copying the inscriptions are concerned. Now we may proceed the process of estampage taking of stone inscriptions. Before copying the stone on which the inscription is engraved is photographed and examined properly to identify the written and unwritten areas. After identifying it, then the stone is cleaned properly with water using coir brush so that all the dust and soil particles are removed. After cleaning, the stone has to be washed carefully with clean water. Then the map litho paper is dipped completely into a bucket of water and placed on the wet stone carefully and uniformly without any foldings and bubbles. While placing the paper, care should be taken that no air goes underneath it. After that, with the help of bent beating brush, the paper is beaten uniformly. After finishing the benting, then with the help of the dabber, the ink is applied uniformly on the paper in a systematic way so that it receives the exact copy of the inscription engraved on the stone. Have a look at the copying of the full stone inscription. After taking estampage, it has to be carefully removed by folding slowly from top to bottom and place it to dry in a shade. After the estampage is dry, the fine spot of the inscription has to be written on its back side. This is the process of estampaging of stone inscriptions. For better understanding, have a look at the video of the entire process of the estampaging taking of stone inscriptions.
Many of the stone inscriptions that are found across different regions of the world reveal the details of extravagance, lifestyle, economic condition, culture, and also of the administrative regulations followed by various rulers and dynasties particular to those regions. The information gained from these inscriptions can be corroborated with the information from other sources in order to provide an insight into the world's dynastic history. Today, let's learn how the information is extracted from these stone inscriptions. The inscribed stone has to be cleaned properly by using wire brush or coir brush with help of water. By using this brush and water, all the dust and soil particles, if any stuck onto the stone, is cleaned. After this, the map litho paper, which is used to copy the inscription, has to be dipped into a bucket of water and then placed uniformly on the stone. Then, by using the brush, the paper has to be beaten in such a way that the letters engraved on the stone will be impressed on the paper. After this, ink is applied onto the paper by using the dabber. While applying the ink, care should be taken that it is uniformly applied so that the engraved letters are visible. After the uniform application of ink, the Aston paper has to be removed carefully from top to bottom and place it to dry. Once it is dried, the file spot details are written at the back side of the paper.
With this discussion on the process of the estampage taking of stone inscriptions and the video which you have seen the entire process, I hope that you may understood the estampage taking of stone inscriptions. Now we may proceed to discuss the estampage taking of other category of inscriptions, that is the copper plate inscriptions. The technique of taking copper plate inscriptions and the tools used for its estampage are different from that of stone inscriptions. Have a look at different categories of copper plate inscriptions and their nature. The tools required for the estampage taking of copper plate inscriptions are a map litho paper of 80 GSM thickness, black colored printing ink, brass wire brush for cleaning its surfaces, citric acid for the cleaning if some dust particles are there, a rubber roller for applying ink on the copper plate for estampage taking. So with these tools, now we may go to the technique of estampage taking of copper plate inscriptions. Regarding the technique of the copying of copper plate inscriptions, before taking estampage of copper plate, its condition is to be noted and one should feel satisfied that it is not brittle and withstands the process. Then the copper plate is photographed and if it is in brittle, a stampage is not taken, and another photograph is obtained after applying chalk on the copper plate, thereby highlighting the engraved portion of the copper plate. If on examination the copper plate is found to be rusted, it can be removed by soaking it in a bucket of water with a little solution of citric acid added to it for it cleaning and better visionable condition. For taking a stampage, the ink is directly applied on it using rubber roller. First, place some amount of ink on a flat hard surface like a metal sheet or glass and spread the ink uniformly onto the rubber. Place the copper plate on a flat surface with some papers underneath for support and rub the ink uniformly on it using rubber roller. While using the ink and using the rubber roller, care should be taken that the ink is applied not heavily and it does not enter into the engraved letters to avoid the overlapping and bulky of ink. The borders of the copper plate should be applied with ink to get the borders of the copper plate also. Next, place the map litho paper on the copper plate and apply a little pressure to take the imprints of the letters. Then remove the paper carefully and allow the ink to dry. After dry, the copper plate is ready and its stampage is complete. In this way, the engraving of the letter copper plate is copied on the paper. But one important thing which we have to mention is, in this method, the impression will be in negative and hence, while reading it, has to be done from the back side of the paper by holding it against the light. Coming to the stampage of seals, as the seals and sealings are made up of terracotta and are brittle in nature, the usual method of taking stampage on paper is avoided. They are documented by taking photographs and are numbered systematically. As in situ study also helps in proper deciphering of the legend written on them. Thus, so far we discussed about an brief introduction on epigraphy, its studies, its history, the establishment of epigraphical branch of Archaeological Survey of India, its activities, its publications, stampage taking of both stone and copper plate inscriptions. One more important facet of it is the preservation of inscriptions. This is a most important and essential one for the preservation of these inscriptions into future generations. It is noted that even after more than 100 years since the establishment of the epigraphical branch, inscriptions do not as yet command from the public that respect and reverence which they deserve. It is therefore the bounden duty of every citizen to protect these engraved stone slabs, pillars, temple walls, etc., which they are containing valuable inscriptions. The general public must realize that it is our common heritage which needs to be preserved at all costs. Even the educated people, local governing bodies, and educational institutions should be encouraged to take steps to prevent the destruction or misuse of these epigraphs and protect them as antiquities. The temple authorities, which the temples contain several inscriptions in their various architectural adjuncts, should also be equally vigilant in preventing the public from damaging temple walls, sculptures, paintings, and inscriptions, so that this rich cultural heritage could be preserved for the prosperity. With this discussion as an introductory of the course Indian Epigraphy, I hope that you may have an idea about what is epigraphy, its history, its scope, and also the activities carried by epigraphical branch of Archaeological Survey of India and the necessity of preserving inscriptions. This is a beginning module. In the coming modules of the course, you are going to learn all these facets of epigraphy in elaborate manner, and this may be a roadmap to know about what is epigraphy and its studies. In the coming modules, you are going to study in elaborate how the inscriptions are helpful in the reconstruction of history is concerned. The history of writings in several modules. Then the writing materials, numerals, and also some select inscriptions for a special study. Thus, this paper may serve as an important paper in the archaeology is concerned and Indian culture in general. Thank you.